What's going
The
on?
part where so there's a game that you didn't mention that I am absolutely astonished the words Darkest Dungeon 2 did not come out of your mouth.
Yes.
Did you not take a hold of it?
Too busy.
All right. So I'm going to talk about Darkest Dungeon 2.
Fuck yeah.
It is a very different game than Darkest Dungeon 1.
Oh.
It is the combat is more or less the same with, additions, minuses, etc. The number one thing that has changed is its entire structure is completely different.
So it seems
Darkest
like the
Dungeon,
Hamlet is now replaced with your carriage
wagon.
journey.
Yeah. So you are definitely an expert at Darkest Dungeon 1, especially compared to me, because I never beat it and I never got much far into it. But you always described as, you're building up your Hamlet, you're building up your teams of dudes, you're trying to keep them decent enough and leveled up to hit this and hit this and hit this, and you're building them up and you're using characters as throwaway consumables because that one's busted, but I used him to get this, to build up the team to take on to the assault against the Darkest Dungeon. Right? And how long would you say a full run through would take?
I mean,
because it's like a game, right? It's like a real ass fucking.
You can spend long. You can spend extra long making yourself stronger, making your team better, and trying to secure your run. And also, I know that, by the end, people were able to do really solid runs within, 15 to 20.
Yeah, so I'm on how long to beat. The main story is listed as 54, and main plus extras is 77. It is a full-ass game, right? It's a proper fucking thing. Darkest Dungeon 2, the goal is for your entire run to take 5 hours. It is so Darkest Dungeon 1, the battles and dungeon crawling was roguelike-ish, right? But the actual management of your guys and your Hamlet, that was more like a I don't know, like a management thing, I guess you would call it. Okay. Darkest Dungeon 2 is, no, you're going to start, you're going to pick your 4 guys, and they are the 4 guys. The man-at-arms is Barristan. The highwayman is Dismas, who, by the way, canonically survived Darkest Dungeon 1.
Okay.
The plague doctor is Paracelsus, etc. And you're going to be going through the path over 5 acts, right? Maybe 2 or 3 little trips each through a road. And if Dismas dies, your highwayman is gone for your run.
You don't hire new.
No more highwayman.
Oh.
You will have to switch to something else when you get to the inn.
Okay, you can recruit.
Yeah, you can recruit and you can switch out. And I did, I think, 3 runs, 2 of which were complete disasters, and the third of which was a lot better. And the stress system has also changed. So you're going down a carriage, right? And the carriage functions very similarly to a dungeon crawl, right? You hit a split in the path, you go left, you go right, you go forward, and then at the end of that path, they'll be like, oh, this has a watchtower, so they'll show you what's ahead, or, oh, this has some supplies.
Okay, so there's no more base. The whole thing is a moving pathway. Okay, got it.
And you will run into battles along the way, right? So the idea is to get to the end of your run with everybody alive and not too stressed out. And once you get to the inn, which is your end of sequence checkpoint, you can use stress reducing items and do that stuff.
It's like a campfire. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The focus of the game has changed from keeping your dudes sane to keeping your party synergized. So everybody starts out with their quirks and their pluses and their minuses, right? And that's still there. If your stress hits 10, by the way, it's a 1 to 10 system instead of a 1 to 100 system. Okay. So when a monster does stress and it does 1 you know exactly what that means, and it shows a little blip.
Well, damage numbers are always extraordinarily low, and I wanted to bring this up in our previous discussion because something hits you for 4, and you go, "Fuck! Oh, it hit for 4."
So,
okay.
You know, I'm getting stressed out, and you can get like a situation where, oh, I became super stressed, and now I'm reckless, or you know, all the usuals, right?
Paranoid.
But much, 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 much more often is that good events and bad events won't necessarily always give you stress. They will also affect the relationship to the characters in your party, because the characters are going to be staying with you for huge stretches of time. You're not you're not mixing and matching. So on my first run, Audrey, the corpse robber, the grave robber, right?
Grave robber, yeah.
Was consistently upset that she had damage on her character, and I would not heal her because she was not getting damaged a lot. The frontliners were getting damaged, right? And she would kick up not a stress point, but a stress point between her and Barristan, the man-at-arms, or her and Paracelsus. And when that stress gets to the maximum, they gain not a negative mental trait, they gain a negative relationship with that character.
Oh, interesting.
And so I think the first one was envious. And what happened is whenever Paracelsus did like a good hit, Audrey would appear behind her and talk shit.
Oh.
And Paracelsus's stress would go up by 1.
Okay. Now, so that would happen in DD1, but in a much more generic way, where if someone cracks, they go over the edge on their stress, and then they're like, whatever, paranoid or whatever. Then every time something happens, they'll just say doomer shit in battle or at campfire, and that doomer shit that they say will stress everyone else out. Yeah.
No, this time it's specific. I discovered that when Paracelsus poisons somebody, they hate it when somebody kills them before the poison damage has run its course.
Wow.
And they'll talk shit. And on the plus side, when two characters get along very well, they get the one that I saw the most often was Hopeful. So Dismas and Barristan, who were the frontliners, became Hopeful in my last run. And Hopeful is the shit, because on any crit, hey man, you did a good job. Stress go down by 1.
Nice. Okay.
On certain hits, the second character would jump in to also get a hit on the thing they were fighting.
Ooh, okay.
And in one situation, that would happen, and then somebody in the back got jealous and talked shit at one of them. So, like, managing the party is now much more important than managing the personality. And that's why you want to buy up, like, cards, so that, now everyone played cards, so the stress went up. So what stress went down? But more importantly, the negative relationship went down. Which means
is it a third meter?
Is going to be... Is there a third meter? No. Oh, yes, but it's not. So on the character health bar, there's health, there's stress, and then when it changes, you'll see the character's relationship. Blue is bad, yellow is good.
Okay. So yeah, bards are you're gonna need to fucking play music and chill everyone the fuck out. Like that I can see that being huge.
The game is also like, because the intention is that you're going to be going through multiple full runs, right? It's wild how tough it is right now. Like I like just barely scraped myself to the end of like one section of track. And the way that they have it working now, I don't think it's going to be that way in the game, but the way they have it working now is that the distance you get on your carriage is going to give you a certain amount of hope, and hope will unlock new features.
So I was going to say, what carries over when your run fails? Yeah, if anything.
What carries over is your hope / profile level, and when every level you will unlock more items to add to the pool, or more characters to choose from. So like when you start the game, beating the game on a completely pure like round one attempt is probably impossible, because like in the current version of the game, I think you can unlock like 4 or 5 extra characters, and that means that when your characters inevitably die, if you don't have anyone to swap them in for, you're just going to keep going with 3 people.
What is the effect like when you bring in a new party member and you don't have any synergy with them? Like what? How does that?
I never got that far. I literally never even got to a point
Okay.
where I had dead party members that I could swap people in.
Because that's what I'm wondering now, is if this is so important and you bring someone new in that's like joining the group but hasn't established any rapport, I feel like late game that would be
Well, at least
horrible.
they're going to be clean. They're not going to have a negative relationship with anybody.
Because there are bosses in DD1 that like rely on synergy that you implement, right? So you would do things like have your you'd have your man-at-arms use an ability to shift positions of whatever he hits in the first 2 rows, and then your jester is going to play a finale and slide himself to the back, and your rearrangement of your positions is optimal damage for the enemy and for where you want to be on the next round. And like there are bosses that like fuck with putting enemies in front of itself to retreat constantly towards the back, and like you have to do that stuff manually. So I feel like that synergy stuff you're talking about is like sounds pretty fucking crucial. And if someone new comes in and they don't have that, like how can you catch up?
Well,
you know?
Because not having negative relationships is more important than having positive relationships.
Okay.
At least currently. In addition, one of the coolest new features is a unique event where you find, I forget what it's called. It's like some thing of reflection. And what you do is you go into a flashback for your character that describes the events that were leading up to either them joining the caravan or them going to Darkest Dungeon 1.
Okay.
And so, Shrine of Reflection, thank you guys. And for example, the first one I picked was Dismas. And Dismas's flashback starts with a battle, and it is him breaking out of jail. And it is him in fucking prisoner garb with his fists and a rock. And you have to beat 4 guards without getting the alarm off. And then once you do that, you learn point blank shot.
Cool. Oh, nice. Yeah, okay. Which is fucking amazing, by the way.
Yes, it sure is. Yes,
Point blank shot
I found that out. Yes.
That's the shit. Okay. Now, you said the full run is probably going to be about a 5-hour thing.
That's what the devs say.
How far did you see up to?
Not far.
A boss?
I saw a boss, and the boss was, I believe it was the Antiquarian, which means there are Darkest Dungeon characters that will be returning.
Yeah.
Also, the visuals are absolutely unbelievable.
Yep. That trailer was godlike.
It is the best version of this kind of 2D-ification I've ever seen, because what they do is they still keep what do you call it? The iconic pose for every type of attack, and that's a still frame, right? That's a still frame. But the way they get around like wanting to animate it is that when you select the attack on your bar before you select an enemy, they'll do a anticipatory animation.
Okay.
So like they'll ready their knife or they'll ready their gun, and it looks great.
Yeah.
Then you click on it and you get the still frame with the number pop as a bam,
bam,
and then you see their cooldown animation as they
put the sword back on the shoulder. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It looked great.
Yes.
It looks really good.
I saw what I saw them doing in the trailer is like it is taking a similar effect to Exerd when it revealed itself, where it's like you're getting what could be 2D here, but when it wants to, it'll remind you it's 3D and then go back to being solid shapes and silhouettes. You know.
There's a weird thing that happened, which is I originally termed it as like I did it during my Mind Goblin series, right? Because Darkest Dungeon 1 is the game that was the most toxic to my OCD that I've ever even heard of. Like, there's no question. Party members as consumables is cancerous to the mind. And then I'm playing it, I'm like, oh no, the change in structure to a much purer roguelike where you're dealing with discrete runs means that the game's actually a lot less stressful to play. It's like stressful in the, oh no, it's going bad, but it's not stressful in the way that if a Darkest Dungeon series of events go bad, you actually feel yourself being pushed into a hole that you might not be able to get out of because you go, oh, I'll just start a new run. And it's not 22 hours to get up to where you're at.
Okay. So a massive part of DD1, of course, is stress management through the church, through the bar, through the fucking hooker den, through the you know, what, like, do you, and you lose them for 1 or 2 weeks sometimes, depending on the activity.
So the current status of that is actually pretty simple. It is, you get to the end of this stretch of road, so you'll be like, this is the evil forest, and at the end of the evil forest, you get to the inn, and in the inn, you can upgrade your character's skills, and you can also use leisure items, be they booze, boxing gloves, playing cards, religious ornaments, whatever.
Okay.
And that will both de-stress and increase synergy between the party. And those are bought or found items.
But you no longer lose that party member for a period of time to an activity.
No, you lose the cash you spent on that item.
Okay. How many currencies are there?
There's a bunch. There's a currency that's just for trinkets.
Yes.
There's supplies.
Trinkets and baubles.
There's supplies that is. Well, when I say trinkets in this, I mean accessories for your character.
Yes, for sure. You equip them, yeah.
There's supplies. There's the trinket currency. There's one that's
antiques.
for a special vendor, I think, and I can't quite remember. I want to say there's at least 3.
Because there used to be 4, and you could exchange between them at different exchange rates. And then you'd need combinations of them to, you know, upgrade abilities or teach new things or whatever the fuck, you know. So
I know this is a bit more about the presentation, I guess, is that Darkest Dungeon 1 has I do know what happens in that game, and it's a very bizarre ending. But it's like even the best you can do is still kind of ass, all things considered. Dismas is alive, so the events of Darkest Dungeon probably were like a victory in that game's context. But upon leaving the hamlet, like the world is over. Like it's the hamlet's problems as far as the eye can see in every direction. And so Darkest Dungeon 1, I remember fighting cultists in the early game, and they were cultists. They were assholes, right? And apparently near the end of the game, they can start to float and get tentacle shit and stuff like that. In Darkest Dungeon 2, they are starting out floating, crackling with evil energy, tentacled, mutated out. Apparently, some of the cultist bosses from the first game are now just regular enemies. Like it is a problem. It is way worse as a state of the world than it was in the first game, which felt like more contained.
Are you still seeing the like enemy types that are like that certain units are effective against, like the rats and zombies, undead, fishmen, and Lovecraftian types?
So I'll tell you what, I saw more enemy types in the 3 or 4 hours I played of Darkest Dungeon 2 than I did in like the 20 that I spent trying to play the first game.
Whoa, okay.
Like every single and every single area has like an entire different enemy pool to draw from. Oh, and here's one final mechanical detail that'll probably worry you, which is enemies have access to the death's door mechanic now.
Oh shit. That's hard. Oh boy. Okay. So there's no clean kills then.
There are, but sometimes they just don't die.
Sometimes they stay standing. Okay. Oh man. Yeah, that's difficult. Interesting. That is the single biggest change in difficulty you could possibly implement of all the things you said. That is huge.
I had generic zombies like Death's Door like 3-4 times.
So Death's Door is your magic pixel, and it's effectively also a feature in the fighting game Dual Souls, mind you. Last Chance. It's when you do enough damage to kill the person, no matter what, there's always a final magic pixel moment of them surviving. So Persona, you survive on one hit after a mortal blow, right? That type of thing. It's same idea here. Is the killing blow puts you down to 1 HP. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so you're gonna love it, definitely. I only really have 2 complaints. You have a lot of options to change how the wagon steers. Because you're literally steering the wagon left and right to hit things on the road, because sometimes they might have items in them.
Right.
I could not find a way to make the wagon not control like complete garbage. Like it controls.
Well, it's the first active controlling aspect of a game that is super turn-based.
Yeah, it feels bad.
Okay,
the second is that the game's interface is like it's not quite as bad as Darkest Dungeon 1, but like so much of it is like dragging and dropping items from like boxes to other boxes.
Yeah.
Clicking on an attack to click on an enemy. My problem right now is that they say use 1, 2, 3, 4 to use your regular attacks, right? And then click on the enemy. 5 and 6 don't work, even though those are buttons that would correspond to real attacks on your character's bar.
Okay.
I want more shortcuts on my keypad at least.
So that stuff that's early access sounding, you know what I mean? But I don't mind the Darkest Dungeon UI, but it is cluttered as fuck. Yeah. It is very cluttered, but the fact that it's mostly touch based made me like wonder. I was like, they're porting this to Switch or console. How the fuck are you going to select things with a D-pad and a controller and it's like eventually, you know, I was like, okay, I figured out how they did it, and there's no way to get it super duper smooth. By the time I was playing, like, you know, my daily runs with it back when I was fully involved, I was just using the mouse for almost everything. I forget, there was one thing that needed the keyboard. I forgot what it was, but there was one button that needed a keyboard. But otherwise, I was playing the entire game with a mouse, which is nice for just being lazy.
Yeah, I can see that it's a little improved. Like, it'll be a little easier for a controller, but like there's still some work to go. But early access again. So
yeah. Was walking around the actual dungeons and fighting the same?
What are you talking about?
Like when you get into a dungeon,
which you don't ever.
It's not wagon into dungeon into
no,
wagon.
The wagon is the dungeon.
So the fights happen how?
On the road.
You jump out and fight?
Just imagine the entire home period is just gone, and when you get to an inn, it goes, what dungeon do you want to go to? But it's a path.
Okay.
And so instead of going like a square dungeon and moving yourself away around, it is a Slay the Spire style like series of branching paths all the way up where fights happen on the road.
Okay. Right. Okay. Slay the Spire. Got it. Yeah. I missed the part where I thought you were. I thought with the Slay the Spire reference, I thought it was like the wagon gets to a cave. We get out and we walk into the cave, and then there's a room that is
the wagon movement stuff is like a direct replacement to the dungeon. The only thing that even approximates that is that you'll find what the game calls a dungeon, and it'll be like a keep or something, and all that is 2 fights followed by a boss fight that are all optional. You can just leave it.
Okay, so no more like you find a weird abattoir. Do you do you cleanse it? Do you touch it?
Okay, that is there, but instead it's the path to your left goes to help some people. The path to your forward gets a shrine of recollection. The path to your right has a little mini boss area. Which one do you want to pick?
Okay.
And then the path will branch from those, and then you have to look ahead and all that stuff. The most interesting thing about that, by far, is that on most road branches, your party will tell you which ones they want to go down.
Yeah.
And the ones that you go down that they like, they'll be happy about, and the ones that you go down that they don't like, they'll be unhappy about.
But like there are things where you'll find an object and it's like a cursed fountain, and like if you have someone on your team that's like compulsive, before you get a chance to choose not to interact with it, they'll be like, me first, and they'll just touch it.
That doesn't have that much of a... I didn't see anything.
And it'll curse you or leave you fucked up in some way or something. Okay.
No, yeah. Instead, what they do is the torch is no longer a consumable that you buy. The torch is literally hope. Like, it's the last bit of hope in the world is the torch on the back of your wagon.
Oh,
and
okay.
It has the same kinds of effects where if it's high, your party will do better. But
light affects certain classes better.
Right.
Yeah, exactly, like the paladin types.
Only way to get more is to help people out on the road.
Oh, okay. Are there still attacks that add to the torch?
Not that I can see right now. I might have missed them, but I didn't think so.
Because some classes, especially the religious types, have attacks that when they land, it increases the brightness. You know,
there might be, but I did not see them.
Okay, interesting. Or if you choose to, for example, use the occultist style healers instead of your Vestals, then they're gonna create instant darkness.
I'm seeing people in the chat say that all of the religious characters died in the course of Darkest Dungeon 1. So there are definitely classes that are not going to come back, and there's going to be a bunch of new ones as well.
Are you serious?
And the way that they're treating the characters is the implications that the characters that you have with you are probably the same ones from DD1 that made it through.
Oh man, the lepers are gone. The Vestals.
No,
are
the
gone?
leper's there.
Okay.
Leper's definitely unlockable there.
Werewolf, Lycanth.
I did not see that.
Okay. Damn. Well, shit. That's nuts. I mean, sometimes it's awesome to go out with a fully religious cast. You know?
I foresee Reynaud becoming a boss. That just feels like I foresee all characters that don't come back as part of the party to be boss fights. Because that would be sick.
So then some classes are currently not implemented because it's early, or they're...
Yeah, there's a bunch of classes that aren't implemented, and it's
okay.
unknown as to what they are, but it definitely doesn't have everything in there. You really need to play it to get, like, because this is a lot of change. I think one of the things I was reading
about wild amount.
The devs was that, like, it's a very different game, and it does not replace DD1.
Doesn't sound like it. Especially when you said, like, that Slay the Spire comparison where you're no longer walking around a dungeon. Like, that on its own is humongously
way
different.
More like a regular ass roguelike. Like, well, this run's a disaster. I'm gonna just try and keep it going as far as I can to get enough points to possibly have a better run next time.
And it also sounds like, by changing the stress system in the ways you described, especially the lack of downtime, because you would have weeks where you're like, my best party is so fucked up after that last dungeon, they need to be gone for the next 2 weeks. Time has to pass. I have to pick in a whole expansion team squad and run with the bench, for a week just to get time to pass so my starters can come back.
In this game, the bench is just dudes that are fine.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, this is one of those what's another game where I'm thinking there's an example I can think of like a game where the sequel just went completely different genre on it.
Oh, I'm sure there's a million, but I can't think of any right now that would fit this.
Yeah, okay. But that's a huge change up. All right. I don't hate it. I don't hate what you're describing.
It's so much goddamn fun. It's real hard, and I do wish the keybinds were a little more forgiving. But it's so good.
Faster runs would be a more not friendly, but like a more satisfying thing though, for sure. Because like I said, like my first save file is just a billion hours, you know, on one of the earliest versions of the game. And, like, I'm like, I think I can do it. I think I can, and then you run through like one of you run through the darkest dungeon and you just wipe out the team that you've been building up for the last while. And you're like, God damn it. My Hamlet's down to scrubs again. This is going to take a while, Yeah. Interesting. Okay.